Hey gang, welcome back. Some exciting news before we get started. We have hit over 500 subscribers, so that means on the last Monday of June there will be another giveaway, this time for 2 packs to a random winner. This week we're going to take a quick break from primers, and instead I'm going to be treating you to a top 10 list of Planeswalkers that are great in multiplayer EDH. This list doesn't assume to be the best Planeswalkers ever, especially not for Dual Commander, which frankly is a whole other monster, but rather for games with 3 players or more. Undoubtedly, if we focused on Dual Commanders, Liliana the Veil and Jace the Mind Sculptor would pretty much dominate the chart. However, we'll save that for maybe another video, but we'll see how it goes. With that explained, let's take a look at the list. Number 10. The Flipwalkers. I'm starting with these guys due to their ability to be easily recurred, either by returning them from the graveyard or by using them as your commander. Most of them have a good flip side, but what keeps them off higher places in the list are the requirements to flip. For example, if your opponent has Rest in Peace in play and you're playing Jace, it can be incredibly difficult to flip him without using other cards. I really like the design space for these cards, and I feel like they're very strong depending on the deck you build. Jace is an incredibly good commander for a mono blue deck, and he does exactly what you want, which is filtering. Similarly, Liliana and Nissa do very well as well, but Gideon and Chandra tend to lack, as mono white and mono red don't tend to be super great in EDH. Number 9. Xenagos the Reveler. I'm rating this guy slightly above the Flipwalkers, mostly due to his +1 ability. His largest flaw is his green and red color identity, which frankly limits how many decks he can go in. Xenagos makes up for this by acting as essentially a second copy of Gaia's Cradle, which is incredibly strong in EDH. Even on a vulnerable body of a Planeswalker, this effect is not something to overlook. His zero-cost ability works twofold by protecting Xenagos and increasing the amount of mana he'll provide us next turn. His ultimate isn't terribly relevant, but chances are you'll be using for his first 2 abilities more than his last. Number 8. Garruk Wildspeaker. Garruk was the second Planeswalker I ever opened, right after Nissa Ravane, which I got from a pack of Zendikar. Until recently, he was the mainstay token green Planeswalker, but that role seems to have fallen to Nissa now. I feel Garruk deserves a spot in this list mostly due to his versatility. His plus ability can almost negate his cost, assuming you're running the Bounce lands, and ramping for us every turn after we cast him is great ability. His minus ability can protect him, which is ultimately one of the best things a Planeswalker can do for itself the turn it comes out onto the field. His ultimate, while not great when he's the only permanent on the field, still works really well with a very creature-heavy aggro deck. Number 7. Jace Beleren. Probably one of the most controversial Planeswalkers on my list, I nonetheless think Jace Beleren is worthy of his place. Most Planeswalkers are justified by their ability to protect themselves, and strangely enough, I think Jace's +1 does just that. Most players, whether they're your ally or your opponent, want to draw extra cards, and the more often you're ticking Jace up, the more likely he is to last longer. On the flip side, I'm sure you've played a game where an opponent drops Jace and immediately uses his -2 to draw himself only a card. Does that Jace live long? Nope. He's all about card draw and hoping that the cards you draw are better than your opponent's. His ultimate isn't something to write home about unless you're running him in the most dedicated mill or reanimator type deck. Number 6. Venser the Sojourner. My boy Venser is a powerhouse in multiplayer EDH. If you've seen my Zedru deck, you'll know that I love to give permanents away only to bounce them back with Venser. Beyond that though, Venser can act as pseudo-vigilance for one of our creatures, or he can untap a valuable rock or land in case we need a counterspell for the next turn. His ability is also made to abuse enter the battlefield effects, which, let's face it, are pretty much what we're playing in EDH anyway. His second ability is one that often goes the most overlooked and can be incredibly deadly for our opponent. Granting our entire team unblockable is massive if you're running more than a few creatures. His ultimate really seals the deal though. It turns any card we cast into basically reading, when X is cast, exile target permanent. Number 5. Sorin Markov. Chances are if you're running this guy, it's for his second and third ability. His +1 is alright, trading some life for a creature or player and padding our own, but if you're really desperate for this effect, I'm sure you could find a better card. No, the reason most people play Sorin is due to the effect that he and Magister Sphinx share, which is to reduce, or sometimes on the rare occasion, increase, a player's life total to 10. No fuss, no muss, just drop to 10. Doesn't even count as damage. His ultimate is a bit strange as well for a mono black card, but taking control of another player's turn is always a powerful effect. Number 4. Elspeth Sun's Champion. Elspeth Sun's Champion meets all the criteria that makes for a good constructed Planeswalker. Her pump ability protects her, expands your board presence, and synergizes well with any kind of token theme, one of EDH's most favored strategies. Her minus ability acts as pseudo removal, dealing with any troublesome creatures with the added benefit of her not dying to it immediately. It also doesn't hit the tokens that she makes herself. Lastly, what makes her really great is that her ultimate can be used multiple times, making those initial 1/1s into serious threats the later the game goes. Additionally, she also has the benefit of being a monocolored Planeswalker, which allows for her to be run in any deck that has white. I think this is an important element for most of the Planeswalkers on this list. Their non-restrictive mana requirements allow for a more generalized use. The more colors you have in a Planeswalker, the harder it is to use it, so I think the best ones are the ones that are the simplest, i.e. monocolored. Number 3. Tezzeret the Seeker. Unlike Elspeth, Tezzeret doesn't have the most reliable way to protect himself. Depending on your deck, his +1 can sometimes untap creatures, assuming you're running multiple artifact creatures, but more often than not, his ability is to ramp you into something bigger. Casting Tezzeret on turn 5, then using his ability to untap, say, Mana Vault and Basalt Monolith can easily be followed up by casting a Wormcoil Engine on the same turn. His first minus ability is also incredibly relevant in a singleton format. Being able to tutor theoretically any artifact directly to the field is a powerful ability. Even if you don't have a combo going, being able to use his -X for 0 to find an artifact land or mana crypt is great. His ultimate is a bit lackluster and only significant in the most heavy artifact decks, but let's be real. How often are you going to ultimate with a Planeswalker in a multiplayer game anyway? Number 2. Ugin the Spirit Dragon. The number 2 spot in my opinion goes to Ugin. Offering us a substantial amount of loyalty, coupled with his various ways to remove troublesome permanents, Ugin is probably one of the best current Planeswalkers for EDH. His first 2 abilities easily deal with most creatures or colored permanents, and Ugin only stumbles when dealing with artifacts and Eldrazi's. His ultimate is pretty incredible, albeit difficult to achieve. However, your likelihood of winning when drawing 7 cards, gaining 7 life, and playing 7 permanents for free makes trying to get there worth it. The fact that he's a colorless Planeswalker harkens back to what I mentioned in Elspeth, in that he's able to be run in almost any EDH deck out there. And the moment you've all been waiting for, number 1, Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded. The cheapest Planeswalker ever in existence also happens to fit the role of being a monocolored Planeswalker, which means he can run in any red deck. All 3 of his abilities are relevant, and he's the best protection in the game, because what better protection is there than being a complete non-threat? But in all honesty, my first choice for best Planeswalker in EDH goes to Karn Liberated. The win condition for Modern's Tron decks, Karn is a monster of a Planeswalker. His first 2 abilities are almost always relevant, removing either a card from the troublesome opponent's hand or removing a troublesome permanent from the field. Unlike Ugin, Karn isn't restricted to hitting colored permanents, so even Kozilek and Ulamog should tremble before this plated Planeswalker. You'll rarely be able to get him to his ultimate, but his identity being colorless means that any deck will have access to him. Well gang, I hope you enjoyed my list of what I consider to be the best multiplayer EDH Planeswalkers in the game. Do you have a Planeswalker that you think should be on this list? Or maybe you have your own list of top 10 Planeswalkers? Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. As always guys, thank you for watching this here vidya, and be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.